the ludicrous Coutts Bank. Isabel, very good morning to you.
Morning. I am a bit worried, Mike, because I'm off to Morocco on Sunday. I mean, do you think I might be burnt to a charcoal?
Well, do you know, if you look at the BBC weather Twitter account, they say that it's going to be about 50 degrees in Morocco. But I've actually been checking the North African actual weather, and it's about 37, 36, around there. So I think you'll have a lovely time. You might want to take some factor 30 or 50 or whatever it is. But basically, you'll have a wonderful holiday. You'll be nice and hot, unlike the way it's going to be here, which is going to be damp and wet and held up by Just Stop Oil protesters.
Well, what people need to do is they need to look at the actuality versus what all these doomsday reports are saying, which is about temperatures being expected to a certain amount. When you actually go back to what organisations like the Met Office and others have been saying are expected to happen versus what actually happened, you see there's a huge divergence. Quite often, some organisations are getting it about 30% wrong, which is quite a lot when you're talking about temperatures.
Yes. And isn't it interesting that these same people are the ones who are predicting all manner of terrible things in other circumstances, like, for example, how many people are going to die from COVID? And I'm sorry to lump it all together, but it kind of goes that way, doesn't it?
I agree with you. I mean, I haven't really wanted to lump all of this stuff together, and nor have I wanted to ever feel or be a conspiracy theorist. But it sort of feels overwhelming sometimes, doesn't it? The amount of absolute twaddle that we're all being subjected to. And you start thinking, you know, are you living in some kind of parallel universe? I mean, yesterday my daughter handed me a coin, having noticed that it's got some Pride logo on it.
The 50p Pride coin. I mean, really?
I feel like I'm in some kind of re-education camp. I'm being told what I should think wherever I turn, and if I'm not careful, I'll probably be debanked like Nigel Farage.
Well, exactly right. And when you look into the actual dossier on Nigel Farage, put together by what you would otherwise describe as, you know, regular business people, bankers, people who do, you know, an awful lot of commercial work, who make millions and millions of pounds for their customers, to actually put into a document like that the fact that Nigel Farage may have sung Hitler Youth songs when he was a child, that he's some kind of xenophobe, that by being friendly with an international superstar tennis player is somehow dangerous. You think, is this really how you people think?
And I'm afraid it actually is how they think. You can just picture them. I mean, I heard Nigel Farage on Talk this morning with Julia Hartley-Brewer, our colleague, and he was describing the way these people sit round in their nice dinner parties in North London, chin stroking, and essentially depicting anyone who doesn't share their so-called values and views as a deplorable, as followers were condemned to be in America. That's what they think of those of us who have a rather different view of the world than they do. We're deplorable, we're unmentionable, we're untouchable, and we're not worthy of fundamental services like banking, which is not a kind of pick and choose situation. I mean, of course, nobody has to bank with Coutts, and I should hope that a fair few people who already bank with them are thinking of leaving them. And hopefully very few people will want to actually apply for an account, because who knows what monitoring may go on of their views. I mean, this has been an absolute PR disaster for Coutts, and I have been surprised and heartened that certain people and political parties, including the Conservatives, who are normally very disparaging of Nigel Farage, and as you rightly referenced in your intro, treat him very badly, have actually rallied around on this issue. I mean, partly not least because the Chancellor himself appeared to be at risk of being debanked.
Yes.
So this isn't just a Farage problem. It is a problem about the way our society's going, that if you don't hold certain views, then you're deemed to be somehow unworthy, an outsider.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it, as well, that they think, I think that Coutts got this one wrong, because like Hillary Clinton and her deplorables campaign, she got it wrong too, because actually the majority of Americans voted for Donald Trump in that instance, and they didn't care whether they were thought to be deplorables. Similarly here, I think the bank miscalculated massively. They thought everybody outside of their office thought the way they did, and guess what? They don't.
They really don't. And I think these people just have no idea. You know, they are not in the real world. Get out of London. Get to some of the tougher parts of the UK. It is a whole different world out there. People are really struggling. And, you know, they see the impact of effectively what we've had, which is open borders for the last few years. It's not called that, but in reality, pretty much anyone can come here if they want to, using a variety of different routes. That is having a huge impact on communities up and down the country. It's affecting the job market, it's distorting the labour market, it's affecting wages, it's, as we all know, putting pressure on public services. And Nigel Farage has been at the forefront of highlighting that. And sorry for the people in leafy Islington, you know, who run places like Coutts Bank. It may be news to them, but not everybody lives like they do.
I tell you what, though, I've got a piece of breaking news which you may or may not know about and you may or may not have seen, but this is truly extraordinary. John Sopel has apologised to Nigel Farage. He's put a tweet out just before we started this show. Dear Nigel, I always believe when I get things wrong, I own up to it. I got it wrong. Sorry. That will teach me to trust reporting of my old employer. If your political views were even part of the reason why the account was suspended from Coutts, that is totally reprehensible. John.
Wow. Wow. I mean, that is...
Sorry to give it the extra publicity of reading it out on TalkTV. Thanks, John.
That is a moment. I mean, the way that he sneered and jeered and was so gleeful at the report that perhaps Nigel Farage didn't have enough money to bank at Coutts was really horrible.
It was pathetic, wasn't it?
It was pathetic, but it was so utterly characteristic of those types of people that sneer and jeer at anyone who voted for Brexit or anyone who doesn't share their views on immigration. So good for him that he has apologised. But where's the apology, crucially, from Simon Jack, the business editor at the BBC, very respected reporter, you know, he's very experienced. Here's what he did, though. He ran a story that was completely inaccurate based on one flaky, it now seems, source. Whether or not, we don't know who that source was, though there's very interesting speculation about who it might have been. Somebody that he sat next to at a dinner, a very senior figure at NatWest.
Yes.
He should not have run the story based only on that one source, something that the BBC has quite often criticised me for doing, on stories that, by the way, have actually got right more often than they seem to. He shouldn't have done that. But even having said that, once he knew that his story was flaky and dodgy, he didn't withdraw the story. That story kept on running on the BBC after Simon Jack had been contacted by multiple people telling him that they hardly had anything in their Coutts account and they were still being offered a service. So he should not have allowed the story to continue running in the way it did. And this is just... Bottom line is that was a piece of spin, and the BBC is not supposed to run stories like that. I'm not saying that they necessarily intended to get it wrong, but having been told that they were wrong, they should have withdrawn it.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree with you more. We'll come back to this in a little while, but just to remind everybody what John Sopel's original comment was, he said, you must feel a bit of a Charlie if you're Nigel Farage and you claim that it's all an establishment stitch-up that your account's been closed when it's you're not rich enough for Coutts. I'm thinking of starting a GoFundMe page for Nige to get him his account back.
Yeah, you must feel a little bit of a Charlie if you're John Sopel and you didn't do your research properly and you put that tweet out and now you're having to make a humble, grovelling apology. So, yeah, there's only one Charlie here.